What's up everybody, I'm Derek, this is Rocking eForge, and today I'm going to be forging a round eye, round pupil punch for the purpose of punching eyes into figurines or things of that nature. So, let's get rocking. Alright, so we're starting out with a piece of, alright, kind of awkward. This would normally be where I would tell you that I'm putting a piece of 4140 round stock in the forge. Problem is, I forgot to order it. So, the only piece of 4140 that I have in the shop right now is this very beat up 4140. It's already flattened down to, I'm gonna say 3/8. Yep. And it's 5 inches long instead of my normal 6.5. I think I shouldn't have too much trouble tapering this down to an actual usable punch still. So I'm going to use this piece, but if you're following along and have a actual regular piece of round bar, throw that in the forge and then start tapering down the business end to about a 1/4 inch square, and I'm going to start dealing with this thing. So let's actually get rocking. All right, so I'm going to forge at an angle down on either corner here to try to minimize the amount of fish lipping I'm going to get at the end, maximize the amount of material, and I'm going to keep this relatively flat because I'm going down to about a 1/4 inch taper here. And I'm just going to focus on getting the tip there first, down to about a 1/4 inch square, and then I'll blend that taper back up to the struck end. All right, so obviously because of the geometry, I've got some interesting stuff going on, but I'm down to a 1/4 inch square. So I'm gonna start blending that back up toward what's going to become the struck end back here, and try to blend all of this lumpy, bumpy mess into a cohesive piece. All right, so I spun this around, and I'm gonna continue working on this taper toward the near edge of the anvil because I've spun it around and I'm holding on to the other end, and I want to continue drawing out as a reverse taper this time. I'm effectively just forging a round punch, and then I'll do something special at the end, and we'll show you that here in a little bit. All right, so now that we've got this taper pretty well roughed in, I'm gonna switch to forging on the struck end. That's it, yep. I'm gonna switch to working on the struck end. And for that, I'm just gonna draw a blunt, square forward taper. And then I'm gonna go ahead and blend that kind of up into the body of the punch, just by about 1 inch, just because that's the aesthetic I'm looking for. All right, awesome. And then once I've got that taper established, I'm going to forge this whole thing down to an octagon and then to round, because I'm going to do a nice polished, shiny, round cross section all the way from tip to struck end. All right, so now that I've got this to a rough octagon, I'm just gonna start following these edges and forging down on them to eventually bring this to pretty rough round, and then I will touch everything up on the grinder. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just spin this on the anvil and knock in all of those little edges to create more and more and more facets, and eventually approximating a round cross section. And now that I'm satisfied with that, it's time to let this cool down, and then I will start grinding to touch up every surface of this, because I want this to be nice and shiny and as close to perfectly round as I can get it all the way from tip to struck end. All right, so at the grinder, the first thing I'm gonna do is just flatten out both the tip and the struck end, get rid of any fish lipping that we got, because we do incidentally get a little bit just from the forging process. And then I'm going to just start continuously in order to grind off all of the little edges and stuff and try to get this thing down to a round, nice, shiny finish. And that's going to give you a really nice round drift. So if you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, leave a comment. I'm just kidding. I've got this pretty well surface ground, rough ground. I've got a couple of spots that are just gonna have to stick out because they were deeper hammer marks and just are not gonna grind out without me taking lots and lots of time to do that. So I'm gonna toss this back in the forge and we're gonna work on the tip before I do an annealing cycle, and then we will actually heat treat tomorrow. In this video, but tomorrow. I'm gonna put a center punch mark as close to dead center as I can in the tip of this. And I'm gonna realize I didn't actually lock this thing in this vise. And this, you can absolutely do this in your post vise. This is just the easiest spot for me to film. A little off. That's better. So I struck it at an angle to get it back towards center. And then I'm gonna toss this in the fire and continue using my center punch to deepen this, and then switch to a thin down ball end punch. And then switch to a thinned down ball end punch just to make what's going to be the negative of the pupil when you're punching it into a piece. And I've just heated only the tip because I want to make sure that it doesn't bend on me super bad. And I gotta be real careful to go as straight up and down as I can. We're gonna switch to the ball end punch. Hopefully I can get enough purchase. Yeah, okay. Next heat. You can do any variation of this with a large pupil, big eye, small eye. But the idea here is that you've got this impression in the tip of the punch that just kind of becomes the pupil when the impression of the tip of the punch is punched into something. And while that didn't end up perfectly center, it's not too bad. I'm gonna go ahead, and I know this is not hardened yet, but I've got a piece of copper sheeting. I just wanna see how that turned out. Okay, I lied, I don't have any copper. I don't know where it went, but I'm gonna use this piece of wood. A little too hard. That's not too bad. I think I will end up doing some grinding, extra grinding. It looks like I picked up a bit of a bend there too, but do some extra grinding on the tip just to make sure that I kind of shift the pupil to the dead center, like grind away the material that it's further away from. But all in all, I think this turned out pretty well. I'm going to throw this back in the fire, straighten this out, and then put it back in the forge and bring the whole thing up to critical temperature and bury it in wood ash in just my old fire pit, and leave this there overnight to cool very slowly for an annealing cycle, just to make sure that there's no major stresses ingrained into that steel from the forging process. So now that the annealing process is finished, I am briefly taking it back to the grinder to grind in a little crown on the struck end, and then put a chamfer on that so that there's no sharp edges on the struck end when you're striking it with a hammer. And then I'm going to just take some time to refine the tip before going through the heat treatment process, just so that I don't have any risk of ruining the temper later on once I'm done. And then I'm going to fire the forge back up and bring this up very slowly to a forging heat so I can touch mark. Yeah, well, half a touch mark, and then spin it around and bring the tip up to a dull orange, and then quench in hot water in order to harden the tip of the punch. And then I'm going to scrape the tip using an old grinding wheel in order to watch the tempering colors run. I'm looking for the tip to get to a straw yellow color, which puts it about 400 to 450 degrees, and that's the tempering temperature that I use for 4140 in order to draw back the hardness from the quench and make the steel a little less brittle and a lot tougher to handle all of the punching. We finally got our second round of straw yellow. I'm gonna let that soak as long as I feel comfortable doing it. I'm just letting this soak as long as possible because if I'm not going to get another run out of it, I might as well let it just soak at the correct tempering temperature for a while before I cool everything off and get back to the grinder. And we'll go ahead and call that good. And I'd say that works out pretty all right. This style of punch is great for forging large round eye and large pupils for things like fish or certain types of snakes or things of that nature, foreshadowing. But I do plan to forge other styles of eyeball punches in the future. So if you are looking for a particular style, keep an eye out for that in the future. But that is going to do it for today's video. Please drop a like, leave a comment, hit subscribe, ring that notification bell. If you want to support me in the channel further, please consider becoming an honorary striker on my Patreon. That link's in the description below the video. Or please consider becoming a member on my YouTube channel. And as always, keep on rocking. That was a hit to correct, back towards center. But I'm not doing a great job at that.